Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with another mixed media-ish sort of card. I've just wanted to play some more, and this card is for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. So not only was I playing with mixed media, but I was limiting myself to the colors for the challenge. So to start off with, I had the Simon Says Stamp Thank You Text background stamp. This came out some time ago. It's still one of my favorites. And I have it face up on my desk. I inked it up with VersaFine Clair Shady Lane ink, just this kind of deeper green. And the VersaFine Clair inks are not water reactive because I wanted to do some ink smushing and stuff on top of this. So if I'd stamped this with like Simon's Pawsitively saturated ink or distress ink, etc., those would just, the lettering would start to get blotchy. However, that could be a cool look. I didn't want the lettering to go, get completely smeared and blotchy, but then I was thinking later, I was like, ooh, that could be fun. This is why you just got to play, experiment, use the different types of inks, use the different types of cardstocks and techniques, and all the things. So anyway, I had stamped the background with that ink. And then I used Simon's Positively Saturated ink in Field, just a deep green. And I smushed that ink pad onto my craft mat, sprayed it with water, and then just doing basic ink smushing. Similar to my last card, except this time, instead of heat embossing the background stamp, I just stamped it with that green ink. So I've got kind of a green on green background going. I just was literally flying by the seat of my pants. It was one of those things where you kind of have a rough idea of what you're doing, but at the same time, it's like, we'll just see where this goes. So I was using my heat tool to dry things. I also used my sprayer with the distress sprayer. If you only squeeze the trigger, kind of halfway, you get splotches of water. And I was pleasantly surprised how the Positively Saturated inks, like this ink was reacting with the water. Again, I need to play some more. I was quite pleased. Like the color really lifted in ways I wasn't expecting. So anyway, I dried the background, but it wasn't completely dry. And I'll get to that in a second. So I dried the background. I trimmed it down to about the size I wanted for my card, which was about 5 by 3 3/4, something like that. And then Crackle paste, as one does. I've had this container of Crackle paste for literal years, and I don't even put the press and seal on it, and it never dries out. Anyway, because the inks weren't completely dry on the background, it did absorb into some of the Crackle paste, which again, I was fine with. But if you want to keep your pastes more true to their own color, which is usually white or transparent, whatever, make sure your background is completely dry. Just FYI. So anyhow, set that aside to dry. And then I die cut some scraps of the watercolor paper with Simon's Etched Evening Blossom wafer dies. And then I smushed some inks onto that craft mat. I used a couple distress inks like KITSCH Flamingo and Dusty Concord. And then I picked up crushed olive, but I also added some of that of Simon's Field ink, that same ink I used on the background, because it just went nicely together. Crushed olive is more of that kind of a yellowy green sort of a color, and Simon's Field ink is more of like a Kelly green in a sense, a little bit deeper than that. So again, if you guys watch my videos, I love to mix greens together. It's fun. So I was just using a paintbrush and painting these colors on, not doing anything spectacular, purposely keeping it a little messy. I love wafer dies like this that have like piercing details, etc., because when you add color like this, the color will kind of sink in to those areas, and they'll sometimes be darker or just give a different sort of a look. So I was just swirling my paintbrush, like a wet paintbrush, into all those little ink smushed areas, and then painting these flowers with those inks. So because this color challenge was pink, green, and purple, that's why I did the flowers. Purple and pink. Got the greenery, my green background. There's somewhat of a method to my madness. So as I was painting these, I started thinking about splatter as one does. I don't know. So my background was dry at this point, and I was like, it needs splatter. It just does. So I moved my flowers off to dry. I put my background in my splat box, and then I just grabbed my white gouache, White Craft Paintworks especially like distressed picket fence paint. That's a really good white splatter that I've used. White gouache. There's a million options out there. So I just squeezed a bit of my white gouache onto my little plastic palette and then mixed it with a bit of water to thin it out, and then heavily splattered this onto the background. Again, no rhyme or reason. This background's got all sorts of texture going on, so this just adds to it. So I splattered this all over the background, used up every last little bit of that gouache, and then let that dry. And then I pulled out the etched Dragonfly wafer dye. This also came out some time ago. I've done several videos using it. It's one of my favorites. My only complaint is I would like to have a larger size like this and a smaller one. Like a little tiny itty bitty baby one in this style. Oh, I would love it. So anyway, I die cut the body from just another scrap of the watercolor paper, and I painted it with that dusty Concord distress ink. And because it's just an itty bitty piece of cardstock, I started using my little die pick to kind of hold it. And you can't see it, but I'm holding my heat tool and using that to dry it so I can add more layers of that ink just to intensify the body a little bit more. And yeah, holding it with my little die pick, because this is such a small wafer die, and yet I still would love to have an even smaller one, because anytime I do florals, I want to reach for this wafer die, and now that I've pulled it out again, it's probably not going to leave my desk for a while, so it might make more appearances in more videos, because I just love it. So anyway, I painted the body with that ink. The wings I die cut from some of Simon's assorted holographic cardstock. This one's like the speckly kind of, love. So I die cut the wings, and this time I remembered that the wings are supposed to be adhered on top of the body. I think every other time I've used this, I've adhered the wings underneath the body. I don't know what possessed me. I was like sitting there looking at the image on the packaging, and I was like, well, that's right. Dragonfly wings are on top of the body. Like, duh. So, yeah. Like, it's not the end of the world or anything. I just sometimes wonder, what goes through my head. But anyhow, this time I adhered it properly. And then I pulled out some vellum and the Friend Greetings stamp set. And I used my anti-static powder tool on the vellum. And I'm stamping the sentiment with clear embossing ink, coating it with some detail white embossing powder, melting that with my heat tool, and then I trim this down a bit more so that I can wrap it around this card front. So my background is dry, the flowers are dry, everything's ready to go. So I'm going to adhere the flowers with some craft tacky glue. I kind of arranged them the way I wanted and then just added the glue, press those down onto my background, added a little bit more glue to the stems to get those pressed down. And then my little sentiment on the vellum, I can just wrap this around. So once I've got that placed straight, wrap that around, and then I just tape it into place. Washi tape works. This is the Spellbinders tape. Same thing. Well, for this purpose anyway. So tape that into place. And then my little Dragonfly, I decided I wanted to pop up with a little bit of foam tape. So I grabbed my little roll of Scotch foam tape and just trimmed off itty bitty pieces of that to add behind the body and the wings. Because again, dimension is life. Like I said in a recent video, I won't sing it, but Laura Basson's, like Laura Fedora, her voice plays in my head every time, like, I think about dimension. Dimension is life. I love it. I don't know. Someone has said they don't like her singing videos. I love it. Like, her little ramblings and all the things. And like she said, if you don't like it, go eat a French fry. So anyway, I adhered my little Dragonfly. And then I pulled out some doodle twine from my stash, wrapped that around right under the sentiment. And then I hold the knot in place with my tweezers so I can tie a little bow, and then I can trim off the tails. So I've got my little pink and white twine along the bottom. And then I took my card base, and I've been using the same piece of Post-it tape. I'll keep using it till it is unusable. But I mask off where the score line is on the card base. And then I inked up that thank you text background again, but this time with Simon's bubblegum ink, just a nice light pink ink. And then stamp that onto the inside of the card, remove the Post-it tape, and then I'm going to put this into my MISTI so I can stamp a sentiment from that Friend Greeting set right on top of it. And this I'm going to stamp with Dusty Concord Oxide ink, because when it comes to stamping, I prefer the oxides over the regular distress inks because you just get a more solid impression. So I did all that and then let that dry, and then adhered the card front to the card base with Simon's Big Mama foam tape. So again, I get a bit of dimension, but it's not as thick, just a bit of dimension. And then added some bling in colors that went with everything else. So I've got some Trinity Stamps Reflective Rose baubles and Glamorous Grape baubles. I love when they come up with little names like this. So I've added a few of those to this card front around the flowers and the dragonfly. And once I was kind of happy with where I had them, I'm just going to adhere these into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue. Once the little baubles are adhered, I'm going to pair this card with a pink envelope, and that finishes it off. So, as always, there will be a link below the video to my blog post. In my blog post, I will link to the Color Throwdown Challenge if you guys want to check it out. It's open to everyone. It's very easy. Anyone can play along. All the info's on their blog. I always link to it in my blog. All that will be there. I will also have all the links to the supplies I use, the pictures, all that. So you can just check that out in the description box below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all the good things. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.